I really think it's important first to set some kind of basic context, because I totally understand that the Chicago Bears had a lot of money to spend, both in terms of they have a lot of money to spend because they had the most salary cap space out of any team in the league, but they also need to spend a lot of money just to even get to the salary cap floor. So I understand that. And I absolutely realize that this team stinks and needs a lot of work. Meaning there are holes in basically every positional group on this damn team. So money abound, but needs are abound too. And I appreciate that the Bears not only need to fill out a roster and build a team, but they need some impact players, some difference makers, some cornerstone guys. They absolutely do. So I understand maybe some of the thought process around signing Tremaine Edmunds in free agency. It's also important to note that I've been a pretty big Edmunds fan going back to his time in college at Virginia Tech, talking about the 2018 draft. For those of you that followed me for years, I had him more highly rated than Roquan Smith heading into that draft. It's true. I did. And you could debate whether I was right or wrong on that. More people probably land on the wrong side of that. But the reality is that this is not me just wanting to be a hater on Ryan Poles or the Bears, or me wanting to be a hater on Tremaine Edmunds, because I'm certainly not, and I've got the history there to support that. All of that to say, the Bears giving Tremaine Edmunds big money like this, 4 years, $72 million, I think it is, like $45 or $50 million guaranteed, is really odd to me. Like really, really odd. I understand it might be tantalizing to think about a guy like Edmunds in the middle of that defense in that second level at 6'4", 6'5", in the middle of the cover two. I watched Urlacher play in Chicago for over a fucking decade. So believe me, I understand. I get that. I also know that Edmunds is still only like 24, 25 years of age. He's coming off of his best season in 2022. And that this team also is giving him a relatively front-loaded contract in terms of the guaranteed money. Most of it will be tied up between 2023 and 2024 when it doesn't really matter as much from a salary cap perspective. So, yeah, on the surface it doesn't look so bad. It looks sensible. It looks like you're getting an impact player and a difference maker. My whole thing, though, is it's the larger context that matters to me. And forgive me here, but I thought part of the purpose of trading Roquan Smith was to remake the roster. And when I say remake the roster, that is rethinking how you build the team, rethinking your approach. So now to trade away Roquan Smith to then just come back and give a different off-the-ball linebacker big money feels odd. You're going to have those that will point out, and I understand this. There was people tweeting about, well, you could have had Roquan Smith for the guaranteed money he got and the overall value of the contract that you got, or you could have Tremaine Edmunds, TJ Edwards, and a second-round pick for about $4 million more. And that is a nice piece of context to throw in there. And like that TJ Edwards signing was a really good value signing. Like that was a really good move. It's one way to look at it. But if we want to go down the context road, let's go down the context road and look at the full and complete bigger picture. Because Tremaine Edmunds, along with TJ Edwards, they might have been signed to fill needs, but these were not the biggest needs on this team. So for those guys to be two of the primary targets is puzzling to me, because the trenches on both sides of the ball are by far the biggest weakness, the biggest priority. The offensive line and defensive line both suck for this team. And your kind of mindset and approach determines whether you feel the offensive line is more important, like I do, or the defensive line is more important. They both stink. They're both weak as hell. So why are two off-the-ball linebackers such a big damn priority for this team? Seriously. Furthermore, when you think about the trenches, these two linebackers, they don't help Justin Fields on the offensive side of the ball in any fucking way whatsoever. Furthermore, What good are those linebackers if the line in front of them absolutely fucking sucks? And you look at these two guys that you're bringing in, Edmunds, Edwards, they played behind two great defensive lines last year. Now you're dropping them into a situation where they're playing behind, at least at this point, as currently constructed, a vastly inferior defensive front. It's nonsensical to me. And what's really nonsensical to me is the monetary investment in the linebacking group for the Chicago Bears team. And I look at the teams, both the teams that made the Super Bowl this past season, along with the next two teams that didn't, in the Bengals and the 49ers. And you could say, no two teams are built exactly alike. Fair enough. But you can have some trends and patterns that become evident when you look at roster construction. And you look at the linebacker position investment by each of those teams in 2022. And this is the entire positional group. The Eagles, $9 million. And $4 million of that was on an edge rusher in Hassan Reddick that had 16 sacks. Spoiler alert, Tremaine Edmunds, TJ Edwards, they're not edge rushers. They're not going to give you those type of sack numbers, that's for damn sure. But $9 million. $9 million. That's it, the entire group. The Chiefs, $5 million in 2022. With all three of their starters on a rookie scale contract. The Super Bowl champions spent a total of $5 million on the linebacker position. The Bengals, $8.6 million. The 49ers, $16.5 million. And that's with a legit stud off-the-ball linebacker and Fred Warner back there. And you look at the Bears now, their investment in just two players in the linebacking core alone is greater than the Eagles, Chiefs, and the Bengals in terms of their positional groups fucking combined. This doesn't make any goddamn sense. And when you look at investment, and you think about the salary cap in terms of how they are invested in other areas, defensive line, the Super Bowl champs had the most cap space, the cap spend devoted to the defensive line. The Eagles were fourth. The Bengals were fifth. The 49ers were seventh. The offensive line is a little different because it's kind of a hodgepodge of a couple of veteran guys and then guys that you draft, with the Eagles being ninth. But all five of their offensive line starters were drafted by the team at some point in time. The Chiefs 16, where you have a bit of a mix there, right? Creed Humphrey was a draft pick. Trey Smith was a draft pick. You know, Andrew Wiley, who was their starter at right tackle in 2022, he was a former undrafted free agent that they brought in and developed over the years. But then you bring in a Joe Thuney, he won a draft pick. Orlando Brown Jr., you traded a draft pick to bring in. Well, those are the two teams that played in the Super Bowl. The Bengals 17th, the 49ers 21st. Again, a mix of draft picks and guys that you bring in. So you actually look at the four teams that made it the furthest in the NFL this past season. They invested more of their cap space on the defensive line than even they did the offensive line. Meanwhile, you got the Chicago fucking Bears investing heavily in the damn linebacking unit, when these teams all invested less. And in the case of the two teams that played in the Super Bowl, significantly less. More than 50% less in their entire linebacking group than the Bears are in Tremaine Edmunds and TJ Edwards combined. That's stupid. And when I think about the fact that for the second year in a row, the biggest priority reflected in the timing of when guys are being signed, the biggest priority for Ryan Poles in free agency was the defensive side of the ball. And on top of that, a non-premium defensive position. It just points to the concerns I have with hiring Matt Eberflus as the head coach last year, when so much of the league is going offense. You hire a fucking defensive coordinator from a team that didn't even make the damn playoffs. Like, what's going on here? Look, I won't deny Tremaine Edmunds, I think, still has upside to improve. But when you think about the hits philosophy of Eberflus, this isn't a guy, I posted on Twitter the other day, Edmunds is not a guy that forces a lot of turnovers. What's he have, like 5 interceptions in 5 seasons of play, something like that? Like 2 fumble recoveries? when if you're comparing him straight up to Roquan, although I've always thought Roquan was a little bit overrated personally by Chicago fans. Edmunds makes sense. He improved in coverage in 2022. As long as he stays healthy, which you say about a lot of guys, right? Like, this is a guy that's got physicality. He's a thumper against the run, improved in coverage. He could be a difference maker in the second level of that Bears defense. And then TJ Edwards, I thought, was a fantastic value signing, and you're looking at playing him on the weak side. Now maybe you're playing Sanborn on the strong side. Your base 4-3 unit is pretty solid. And when you get into your nickel situations, your dime coverage situations, you can sit there and say you've got TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmunds as your two linebackers. There has definitely been an upgrade here. I don't want to pretend like that's not true. It absolutely is not true to say that there's no upgrade here. There's a sizable upgrade here. But in a non-premium position, and as of right now, and this is where it's hard to fully go in because you still have plenty of time, there are still free agents available. But I do think it is fair to question the prioritization of Ryan Poles and the Chicago Bears organization, because here they are, second straight year, putting an overemphasis on defense, and this time they're doing it on non-premium positions. Look, Bears fans are going to have nostalgia about Lance Briggs and Brian Urlacher all fucking day. That's great. Urlacher's in the Hall of Famer. Briggs is a borderline type of guy, probably never gets in. And the reality of all of that is they won exactly how many Super Bowl championships with those two? I rest my case. It's nostalgia only because those were better times relative to most of your time being a Bears fan in your life. It still doesn't make it all that great. I'd rather pattern myself against teams that are making Super Bowls, winning Super Bowls, getting really close to the Super Bowl. And the Bears are going in a divergent direction that just doesn't make any damn sense to me.